I don't hear myself through my headphones. Yes, man. Like, I feel real good about this right now.
Pay attention, because you are now listening to Permission to Speak Freely.
Ever good.
Hey, what's going on, world? Hey, man, we got a really good pod today for you guys, man. Hey, real great conversation. And I cannot wait to get started, man. So with that being said, let's get right into it. First, we got a guest, as you guys already can see. So we're going to let him introduce himself real quick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amaury Ponciano. I'm a IT Master Chief, now with 23 years in the Navy.
Jordan year, right?
Yeah,
All right. So
23.
before we get into it, right? First, I'm gonna talk about 2 weeks ago when we were supposed to, get into it, right? So, boom, we posted somehow. Angeline finds something to do every Thursday, right? Like every Thursday she gets it. So that's when we record. If you're a listener, we record on Thursdays, right? And this Thursday, she just happened to get into a car accident, right? And I'm like, man, we set this up. We've been looking forward to this. I was talking to Amaury like often, like, hey, we ready? He was ready. And then accident happened. I had to Canex, then I like uncanexed. And then I'm like, hey, bro, you good? Nah, bro, I'm at the pool now, man. But we tried to do it. We tried to get back, but it wasn't going to be what it will be today. The waves, the pool waves, kids jumping in the pool, it's great stuff. But we got you here today, which is super beautiful. And I'm super happy that we can start this pod. Hey, Damon.
Definitely. Yeah.
Before we get into it, man, anything from your week, anything noteworthy, anything you want to talk about?
No, man. Same old thing, man. My back's still jacked up. Other than my back, I just want the world to know, man, because they care about me, man. The world out there care about me. People didn't hit me up and ask me how my back was doing. So I want to let them know I'm doing a little bit better. I'm doing a little bit better.
That's crazy. They hit you up?
Man, come on, bro. This is me, man. Come on now.
No, because I'm saying, yeah. I told the same people out in the world that my wife was in a car accident and I got not one.
Nobody hit you up.
It's just for entertainment.
Man, nobody hit you up.
I'm just making shit up for entertainment purposes.
Man, I'm sorry to hear that, man. I'm sorry to hear that. But yeah, my back doing better. I got an MRI coming up, next week. So I'll let you guys know how that go.
Yeah.
How about you, man?
So me. Nothing. Just Chief season stuff. So I'm running the season this year. Yeah. So it's a big learning thing for me because I'm usually doing like video, because that's my specialty. So I'm usually doing video stuff like that for the season. It's really no questions asked. I don't really have to do much for prep when the season start. I'm a video it. We're gonna have a nice movie. It's gonna be good to go. This year when I joined this mess. Well, last year, coming to this command, I was telling the old lead, my boy JC, like, yo, I do video. And I don't know if he knew how serious like that was, So I'm like, yo, I could send you a picture. I could send you, because we make movies, Amaury, like other season. It's like almost like a reality show where we get
hell of a job, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, so it's almost like a reality show. Now people gonna steal this idea, right? But it's all cool, right? So we get the selects like kind of like how they got confessionals in a reality show.
Yeah.
So like every major event, like we only interview the selects probably like 3 times a season, but it's after like they might talk about like vessels and what it mean to them. They might talk about like their first week and what it meant to them, and then they might talk about before final night and what it meant. And it's like, but like we keep the audio and we clip it through the video. So it's kind of like a mini movie. And these things last, like I think the longest one was like 37 minutes. It was long, right?
That's what's up.
Our first one was like 30. Aside from the fact that Saul got like a 3-minute intro, right? Saul intro be like 3 minutes. But it was like a 37-minute video. But I like, long story short, I get to the new command. I'm like, hey, bro, I do like these videos. And like, so I always sometimes try to talk about the things I do without like showing people and just hoping that they just, yeah, all right, bro, like I'm going to put you, so, but he put me on the photo committee and it was like really like literally like pictures, you know what I mean? And then like, the lead was like, yo, you could do whatever you want with the video. But then it was like, yo, I was going to have to do it all by myself. Right. So I'm used to like me and Saul working together. So like, I was like, so I joined the photo committee, but I didn't feel like I was doing the most I could do. So I'm like, all right, let me step out of I don't want to try to convince people to like that I do video next year, right? So let me step out of video and just do something different next year. So I put my name in a hat to be the lead, and I got picked. So it's been a learning. It's been it's been a learning process for me because, like I said, that was the most I've ever done was video, and it's like I'm never really. I don't got to be at the meetings. Like yo, when we ready, and they knew it. It's like it's like yo, they know Damo gonna show up when it's time for video. Damo and Saul, they got this. You know what I mean? And big shout out to Saul who really had a big part in that stuff. I had like 100 bad shots, and so I had to go through 1,000,000 bad shots to edit. You know what I'm saying? So. But that's it. That was it for me. You know, we went to the site that we doing final night at or whatever. We went to the site today. We walked around, super hot, had a good time. But I'm gonna cut to the chase, man, because we don't have a guest here today for nothing. So we've been looking forward to this episode for a long time. But I'm gonna cut to the chase real quick, and I'm gonna start with the hero of the week because I think that's relative to where we're gonna go, right? So our hero of the week is Sergeant Darryl S. Cole, United States Marine Corps, Reserve, Medal of Honor, February 19, 1945, Iwo Jima, Japan, World War II. Right, here's the citation. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond a call of duty, while serving as leader of a machine gun section of Company Bravo, 1st Battalion, 23rd Marines, 4th Marine Division, in action against enemy Japanese forces during the assault on Iwo Jima and the Volcano Islands, 19 February 1945. Assailed by a tremendous volume of small arms, mortar, and artillery fire, as he advanced with one squad of his section in the initial assault wave, Sergeant Cole boldly led his men up the sloping beach toward Airfield Number 1, despite the blanketing curtain of flying shrapnel, and personally destroying with hand grenades 2 hostile emplacements which menaced the progress of his unit, continued to move forward until a merciless barrage of fire emanating from 3 Japanese pillboxes halted the advance. Instantly placing his one remaining machine gun in action, he delivered a shattering fusillade of succeeded in silencing the nearest and most threatening emplacement before his weapon jammed and the enemy reopening fire with knee mortars and grenade pinned down his unit for the second time. Truly gauging the tactical situation and evolving a daring plan of counterattack, Sergeant Cole, armed solely with a pistol and one grenade, coolly advanced alone to the hostile pillboxes. Hurling his one grenade at the enemy in sudden, swift attack, he quickly withdrew, returned to his own lines for additional grenades, and again advanced, attacked, and withdrew. With enemy guns still active, he ran the gauntlet of slashing fire for a third time to complete the total destruction of the Japanese strongpoint and the annihilation of the defending garrison in this final assault. Although instantly killed by an enemy grenade as he returned to his squad, Sergeant Cole had eliminated a formidable Japanese opponent, thereby enabling his company to storm the remaining fortifications, continue the advance, and seize the objective. By his dauntless initiative, unfaltering courage, and indomitable determination during a critical period of action, Sergeant Cole served as an inspiration to his comrades, and his stout-hearted leadership in the face of almost certain death sustained and enhanced the highest tradition of the United States Naval Service. He gallantly gave his life for his country. Sergeant Darryl S. Cole, United States Marine Corps, Medal of Honor, 1945, Iwo Jima, Japan, World War II. Normally, I go straight to Damon and ask him, how he feels about the citation, but I'm gonna do a little different today. Amaury, how does that make you feel when you hear that?
First, you have to start with saying that it's impressive. I mean, you hear that even if you're not in the military, right, and cannot relate necessarily to being in battle or to having gone through something similar. You get to hear the steps, the things that he had to do, and the fact that he kept coming back, right? Like if it's just not just one time and just maybe got excited at that moment and did it and then retrieved or did something, he continued to do it until unfortunately he was killed. So that just tells you about his character, right? And the desire to do whatever it took to help his brothers and sisters in arms to get the mission accomplished. So I've been blessed in the sense of having to work with people that to that caliber. And when I hear a citation like that, I think about those individuals, which we're probably going to talk a little bit more later on.
Hmm. When did you join the Navy?
I joined the Navy in 1999, right out of high school. As you probably could tell a little bit from my accent, I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I came to New Jersey when I was 14. I didn't know any English, and I went to high school, and then for the summer I went back to Dominican Republic, and then as soon as I got back like 31 July, and the 2nd of August, I went and I was in boot camp. So I was in RM for 2 weeks until they switched us to ITs later on that year or whatever, and then I went off for orders, and I remember telling my instructor I was like number 2 or number 3 in the class, and I told him, I said, I want to learn my rate, and I want to go somewhere where I'm going to do everything that is required for an IT. And he was like, DDG. So the newest DDG at the time was the USS Cole.
And that's where you went.
Yes.
In 1990, did you get there in 99?
I got there in 2000. I got there in 2000 because I had to wait about 3 months to be to get classed up. For some reason that year we had a lot of ITs going through A school. I mean, we had days, night, and mids classes, and we still had to wait 3 months. So I didn't get to the ship until late March of 2000.
So you got to the ship late March 2000. And what was how was life on the ship when you got there?
So I mean, now that I could compare it to to just my experiences, you can see a very close crew, right? From radio to where I went, and the other ITs there, and then to the ship itself. It for what I could tell back then, and then just remembering a little bit now, it's everybody, kind of like understood where their job. Everybody was, you had your differences, of course, and you had your groups, especially when you go in the mess decks. Like all the ITs, we used to sit in one area, and then you had your different, ethnicities and different, departments. You have all that, but at the same token, there was always that camaraderie that I got to see early on, and then I was very lucky because I checked in, and right away we went and come to X. And that was one of the reasons why I checked in earlier, because my sponsor, she wanted me to get there so I could get a taste of like our first port. You always do that in Com2X, kind of giving you the crew what a port visit might be, even though it's not overseas, but what it would look like. And I was lucky enough that it was Miami, and we got to see, you get to see the dynamics also then outside, right? So by the time we went on deployment in August, we already had even more of a chemistry because we did that we did Com2X, and then we did that port visit. Yeah, it was a really close crew.
Yeah. So prior to what's up, Damon?
Yeah, Amaury, I got one quick thing, man. I don't know if it's just me or not, but we talk to a lot of people here when we talk about you think the first ship is one of those things where you go there, you young, you're hungry, because a lot of times the first ship is like a lot of people's they best command. I mean, it's my best command I was at, blah, blah. I was thinking about this for a second. I think maybe it's because, we didn't know no better. I came in at 18, first command, and sailors knew their job. Sailors knew a lot. You learn so much. And I was wondering, is that one of those things where, you know what, man, we were just hungry for information back then.
So I really believe that, right? Because I think the Cole is still will be up the top, and it's just one of those things. One, because of what happened, of course, and then two is in my first command, and it's what you're saying though. I was so hungry to learn, right? Like I was just, and I saw that everywhere. I will say this too, that for this generation now, they have a disadvantage that I don't think we had way back then in 2000, which is, if you really think about it, if you came in, I want to say from 2000 to about 2005, 2006, we were not worrying about manning like we are now. right? So
Yeah.
so you were doing your job, right? Like you came in, yeah, that you still went and do DCPO if you need to. You still went FSA or cranking, like we used to call it back then,
Mm-hmm.
which I did. But
Mhm.
we were completely manned. It was a DDG, and we had 336 people. Now most DDG are between 270 to 280, if that. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
so when you take that, when you add that burden of having less people, but you still have all the responsibility. The DDGs today are doing the same things that they were doing back then. You had your line handlers, you had your unrep, you had, like I said, your DCPO, your FSA, 3M. Like you still have all those things. I don't care how modern the equipment is. You still have to do all these things. So to go back to your question, I think it was such an amazing command to me because you didn't have that burden of being on demand. We were actually trained, which is another thing. We were back then, ships were not going out to sea as much, and as
Mhm.
often, and we didn't have those heavy rotations. So people were trained, right? Because we went out to sea to do training, not just to deploy. So you put all that together, and it was like that perfect scenario, right? When I look back and I look now, and my last deployment in 17, and although I did it in a carrier, I could see the sailors being completely stressed compared to
Mm-hmm.
how I was back then.
Yeah. So I get my question for you is this. I remember my first day, like pulling up, like my dad, he drove me to the ship, right? Norfolk, stationed in Norfolk. In the ship, like the pier was the biggest thing in the world to me. Like I've never seen nothing like this before. Never been now, now I walk a pier and it's like hunky, like the same, hunky dory. But like when I first went to a ship, it was the biggest the world trade, at the time, like that World Trade Center. Like I've never seen anything this big. I walk up on a ship, the fumes were something I've never smelled before. The ladder wells, just like, yo, what are these? Like, how can I walk through these? And I remember my first thought, right? This was my thought initially. I signed up for 6 because I got the bonus, right? But I'm gonna
Got you,
find a
got
way
you.
to do 4, and I'm gonna get out and become a music superstar, right? That was
Got you.
my
Okay,
my
okay.
goal as an E1, right? What was yours when you first? What was your innocent E1 goal?
So I was one of those that was very lucky. I was very in a lot of conversations with my sponsor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which, by the way, this is a quick funny story. Back then, the orders did not have a sex attached to it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
although she was Latina like me, they thought I was a female. And although I talked to her over the phone, I guess my voice was not as deep as it is today. They had my rack in the female birthing, by the
Oh
way.
man.
So, but anyway, when I talked to her a lot, and she gave me a lot of information in the sense of what's going to come next, within security, right? No OPSEC, but what was going to come next, what was expected of me. Like I already knew going in, I had to stand watches and what kind of watches we did or whatever. But to your point though, everything seemed so grand as I was walking. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, the pier was huge, you know, uh, getting to the quarterdeck and like seeing, a first class and as the OOD, and then a Lieutenant JG is standing there as well. And I think because it was later on the evening when I landed, and she picked me up and I got there, like the CDO was waiting, because that's who they, admin is not there anymore. So that's how they muster you, like, so it was like
Yeah.
so grand, so many people waiting for me. And I'm just this little E1, like just like
Got to see
with a
that.
C back on me and and sweating because I'm wearing my dress whites and I'm just like I don't know where to go. Um and everything, like you said, everything was magnified. The fumes, the smell of the birthing was something to get used to. Remember when I went to radio and then going in and it was freezing down in there,
Yeah,
because
it's
that's how
super
we keep it
cold.
as ITs. Yeah.
Yeah, super cold.
So it was so many emotions, but for me, so to go back as far as what I wanted, I was like, this is what I signed in for. And my goal was 4 years because I only
Mm-hmm.
signed in for 4. Use the money for college that they gave me, and then go to college after I did my 4 years. So it was more like, hey, let's hit it. I got 4 years to do the best that I can, but this is not a lifetime thing. You know.
Yeah. So when it's done, it's done. I'm gonna do it
Yes.
while I do it to the best of my ability. But when it's done, it's
It's
done.
done.
That's Seaman Ponciano, right?
Yes, indeed.
Damn, I had another. Oh,
I got a funny story too, man, about when I
What's up?
came in, man. Like, I don't know if I told this. I don't think I told this on the pod before, man. But when I got to San Diego, man, like I drove. So I had me a little, I ain't drive. I got my brother, they drove me to the airport. I'm from a little town where I went from Mississippi. We don't have a big airport. So I had to go all the way to Jackson, right? Mississippi. So when I get to Jackson, I fly over, right? And I get to San Diego and I don't have my record. No orders, no nothing. I mean, I don't have no orders or nothing with me, right? So not only I'm E1, don't know what the hell going on, I ain't got no orders. And on top of that, my ship is underway.
Oh, shit.
So, and it was on the way for like, I think 2 weeks it was going on the way. So I didn't know where to go. I didn't go nothing. So went to the MA, went through the little, you know how you walk in San Diego, you walk in the front, talk to the guy right there. I said, hey man, I don't have this, I don't have that. I guess the base, I know the SDO or whatever, came and got me, talked to me. They didn't know if I was UA, they didn't know anything. So they end up putting me in restricted barracks.
Oh my God.
And I pretty much stayed in restricted barracks, open bay, the whole thing until my ship came back and got me, man. That's crazy, man. I remember that just like yesterday, man. Left my order. And the only reason why I kind of got away, it was 2 weeks. I probably did like 3 or 4 days there until my brother them actually found a way to send me. And back then, I came in 98. So back then, it wasn't that easy to get that paperwork to me. You know what I mean? So it took a while for them to, and then, Mississippi already, take a little shit, figure that shit out. But yeah, man, it was crazy.
The Cole, right? The schedule was pretty fast paced when you got there. I guess y'all were, because if y'all were going on deployment in August, right? Mm-hmm. And you got there in March and y'all had a Com2X right before deployment, y'all had a hell of a schedule before deployment with the workups and everything, right?
Oh yeah. So if the cycle back then, Com2X was like the culmination. Like boom, you do Com2X, and literally we came back and it was time to go on your leave, before deployment. The 2 periods of leaves to go, right? And unfortunately, as little E1, I took some leave on my way to the ship, so I had none. So I had to stay, and I lived on the ship, something that we all had to do back then. And again, and maybe some of that is age and the things that you want to remember, right? Like, I don't recall being as busy as it is today, right? So even when the sections were, 3 sections, because you got the palm periods, it would just, we did our job, right, and we did stuff. I also feel, and as a leader now, some people might not like this. Back then, we used to do what was required. We just did not invented things and taskings just to keep us busy, right? So
talk to him.
Yeah.
Talk to him.
So ITSR Ponciano will work his full day, whatever I had to do, but it was because it was work to do. If it wasn't work to do, then I didn't have to work all day, right? Yeah. And I had an amazing LPO that to this day, I look up to him. He went LDO and he retired as a commander. The guy was sharp, but he also cared about people in the sense of, we're going to do the job. We're going to do it well. But I also want you to decompress. And whatever it was, as long as you did it the proper way and not get in trouble, he was all for it. So that's one of the many things I kept from him as I gotten into the ranks and stuff. So
yeah, and I can't lie, that IT life I was on a CG. And we was on the DDG later though. But as a young sailor on a CG, that IT life looked good, man. I was looking at the ITs. Like, I'm an EM, so I got to do maintenance up there. And it's cold, y'all chilling. It used to be, I hope I ain't snitching on nobody, but they used to have like, what is it? hammocks. Yeah, they used to have hammocks like laid out, go to sleep.
Man.
Hey, man.
Because y'all got to be up there.
Exactly. We got to stay.
Yeah,
I was just
yeah,
about to say, we got to be, it's 24/7, right? And another thing too, again, and we go to Manning back then because of the Manning and because of the 24/7, we didn't stand quarter deck watches unless we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have to deal with that either, right? Yeah. Although I will say from my LPO, again, things that he did that I look back now that maybe we didn't quite understand back then, but it was just trying to make us more competitive, make us better. He will get us qual though. He will make us get qual. And then when the duty section, and for whatever reason you went on leave and now they only have 3 messages of the watch and they actually need 4, so that way you don't have to give someone a double watch, then boom, I will stay in watches, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was qual. But any other day, if we were fully manned, those ITs were staying in radio. 24/7, but we survived down there.
So this is also just a big learning process for you, period, because not only are you like a few years removed from moving into the country, right?
Yes.
You joined the military in 99, which is a melting pot at this point of a whole bunch of people, and culture was like nowadays for me, for instance, like with like younger people, our cultures are like more intertwined than 99. Like 99 the hip hop culture, for instance, in 99 was like completely separate from like punk rock, which was completely separate. Now everything is kind of meshed, right? So like people do the same thing. Like all the young people got TikTok and they all do the same thing. It don't matter if they country, it don't matter if they urban, it don't matter where you from, you kind of doing the same challenges or whatever. At this time in your life though, you're like brand new to America. I remember my friends that were like new to America in 07. And like, in order for me to, I think I talked about it on here, but they like, hey, like, how do I talk? Like, what the fuck is going on in America? I'm like, yo, here's a couple movies. I give them 40-year-old virgin. I give them Knocked Up. I give them a bunch of Judd Apatow movies. And I'd be like, watch these. And then they came out of it just cursing more than anybody else on the ship or whatever. But they was like, yo, this is America, right? This pop culture, this is America. This is what y'all talking about. So as much as I want to get to October 12th, right? I do want to get to October 12th so much. But I feel like we're at like somewhere between March, August, and October. And I want to know for you as a E1, new to America, new to the ship, getting to meet all these people, just how are things? Did you go cranking before or FSA, whatever we want to call it? Did you do this before October?
So I did. And my clumsy self was trying to go down a few decks to go work out. And I wasn't holding to the ladder correctly. And those DC help me out here where the clips for the hatches, one of them got in my knee and I had to get like pretty bad stitches. And so they replaced me from cranking because I was in the wardroom. So I had to go from the galley all the way to the wardroom, like bring up food and things like that. So I had to be up and down the ladder. So they took me off. And later on, I'll tell you a little bit more once we talk about the 12, but that had an impact on someone else that I regret, right? Because that person passed away because he was in the galley in my spot.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that. Were you supposed to be cranking on October? That's what I was about to ask you. All right, so before we get to October, I want to do a do better segment. Damon, you got anything for the do better segment before I go? Because
no, go ahead. I mean, you had brought up something earlier about like I was bringing up about this 1600 emergency, but you kind of touched on it earlier. My do better was like we always got these 1600 emergencies always be happening right now, and we kind of touched a little bit earlier, but I'm interested.
My do better has to do with the Cole, right? So I went through boot camp in 07. So this is 7 years removed at this point. Well, 6 and some change, right? Because it's March. But we learned about the Cole. And as a young sailor I didn't know about anything that happened on a Cole until I joined the Navy and went to boot camp and started learning. Like it didn't seem to be kind of like drilled into us as kids in high school. I was in high school when all of this happened, right? Probably the 9th grade, because I was in 10th grade when September 11th happened. But it completely missed my television screen, my classroom, like everything, right? And so I think another entity should have done better too, as far as like the way the reports and responses and stuff like that. But I know we'll get into that later. But I want to say that the young me as a sailor, I should have done better, and kind of learning more about like our culture as a military, and like really appreciating this thing. Because before we get into it too much, I do want to say we lost 17 shipmates.
We sure did.
That day we lost 17 shipmates that day, and again, it was like I looked at it like it was like Greek mythology. You know what I'm saying? Like this is a story, and we lost 17 shipmates, and that was it. I didn't think about the life on that ship. I didn't think about chicken fajitas, right? I didn't think about that morning before. I didn't think about uneasy feelings before deployment. I didn't think about how we're going to respond the day after what happened. People sleeping outside. I didn't think about any of this stuff. All I knew is this is trigger warning. All I knew is it was a hole on a ship and we lost sailors. And now we were in battle stations doing an event. How do I pass this event? I did not think about the actual life and the actual soul that's in what happened on the USS Cole. So young sailors, just think about it. When we talk about history and we do these heroes of the week and stuff like that, we do it for a reason, because these are real people just like us, and part of the reason why we talked with Amaury for the last 30 minutes about who he was when he first joined the Navy is because like we're all just that person. We're all that E1 that came from another country that's just trying to figure out America and the ship, at the same time or whatever. And then these things happen. And then like, how just, how do we respond? What's the human aspect? How many people are tired? How many people want to leave? And I don't want to get too deep into it before we get started. I want us to, get started. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit of what I know, Amaury, and please, correct me. October 12th, 2000, 11:18, right? Life changes on board a DDG for 336 sailors. The captain, so Suppo, y'all had just finished refueling, right?
That's correct.
Just finished refueling. Now, right now, at this moment, as an E1, how much of this stuff do you understand? Were you on watch for refueling?
So I understood, because as a E1 and a destroyer, you are part of every evolution. So so I was part of the seeing anchor as we were going in, right? So as we coming into Aden and Yemen, we noticed, and there's a video that someone took, and it's still, I think they posted it to YouTube at some point, where they're taking, they're recording, because they did it in every port that we went to. And as you going into the harbor, you seeing like 4 or 5 ships that are sunk in the harbor, right?
Okay.
Most of them look military, right? So I think there were Yemenis military, but it was still sunk, and it just like it right away you had a little bit unnerving, right? That's not something normal to see as you going into a harbor and to another foreign country. And yeah, we're in the Middle East. Let's just be real. Like even though there was nothing as 9/11 back then, or even the Cole, we were still, we still had some sort of a higher level of posture as we were going in. So we went in and we docked it, and the best way I could explain it is think about kind of like a U, right? And the ship was facing towards land. So if anything happened and we had to like move, we were just gonna go aground, because we were gonna be straight to land. So as we were pulling in, the CEO made a request or told them to move the ship to where we were facing out. Which then meant that the pier that we were refueling was in the starboard side instead of being in the port side, which then has other ramifications. But at that moment, it was just simply, as later on, as I read his book, and then later on, just talking to other that were in the meeting, was simply as if anything happens, I want to be able to get underway right away. So for me, we did the CN anchor. We started refueling, and the 1MC comes over, and I think it was the XO, and he said that we were refueling extremely fast, and that we were going to set CN anchor again to just leave, because at first when we were pulling in, and we were supposed to be there for like 4 or 5 hours, we got there at 9, and we were already done by like 1100.
Y'all actually had to throttle down on the pressure.
Yes.
To get less pressure. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I know. So I'm sorry. So like as far as I knew we did see an anchor. We're refueling, and then I got to go eat chow because we're about to go and set see an anchor again.
So do you remember? Was this like normal chow time, or y'all kind of modified chow time so you could set see an anchor?
It was still kind of chow time, but it was, think about it. They do early chow. Just think about doing early chow for watch relief 15 minutes earlier than the usual. So if they usually do it at 1100, that time they did it at 10:45.
Okay. So then CO pretty much said, because I read the book as well. CO pretty much says that he wasn't trying to offload trash in this port. Just want to get back underway. And that matters. That matters so much to me in this story, right? CO did not want to offload trash. Suppo kind of pushed it, right? CO initially said, no, we're not going to do it. Suppo comes back with XO. And CO like, all right, let's offload trash, right? And so when you decide to offload trash, and then that means you expect more of whatever the facilities are that, have to offload trash. In this case, it's boats that have to come pick up trash or whatever. So CO decides to offload trash. And then, so that there just put me in a perspective of, I used to get so frustrated, right? Because I'm going to just kind of incorporate, before we really get into it, I'm going to incorporate some things that I think about today. But I remember being on a ship and asking a CO a question, right? And just feeling like the CO could just say yes, like could make like a snap damn decision, like, yo, captain, like just say yes, you're a captain, just do this, right? But it just made me think about when captains make last minute decisions, like how much weight is in that decision, and not necessarily like at the fault of the captain, but the captain got to think about that. Like, and I'm sure after things like the Cole, captains take all of that into consideration. Like, yo, let's just stick with my first mind. Let's go. Because I used to be, man, these captains, they don't want to take risk. And I know you probably thought like that too before.
Absolutely. I mean, even now, as my last deployment as senior chief, and I'm like, just do it. Like, why are we discussing this 7 different times? And you need a PowerPoint for this. Like, so I completely agree with you. Like, we don't think about us that there are CEOs that don't have every single, because every decision that happens on that ship goes back to that CEO. No matter what we do, even if it's me or you that decide to do something that we were not supposed to do, ultimately they're going to look at him or her as the commanding officer. And sometimes we lose sight of that, right? Like we just, hey, sir, let's just go aloft. Why is it such a big deal to go aloft? Like, we got to do maintenance. You knew we had to do maintenance, but it has to be a process, because he or she has to look at everything. And I'm glad that you put it in that perspective compared to like how the story went.
Yeah, that matters so much.
Yeah. And you got to remember too, it's only take one time, right? You can make a million decisions, nothing happens, right? But only that one time, then you start thinking about, every decision you make now. It's just a
every accident is like the perfect mixture of a bunch of things that went a little bit weird. Like, yo, on this day, I would normally do this, but I just happened to do this, then this happened, then this. But all right, Amaury, it's time to talk about it. So 11/18, October 12th, 2000. Just where were you? What was your experience? how did that day play out for you?
So I was standing in midships. I was on the starboard side, and I was online to go get chow. I remember very vividly. There's some things as I get older, and things that I don't remember, detail by detail, but I do remember certain things that will never escape me. And one of them was there was this seaman, ITSN Guana, and there was also a deck seaman, Seaman Wiberly, who wanted to be an IT and was getting training by me and Seaman Guana and radio. So all three of us come up, and they say early chow for watch relief, in this case for sea and anchor, pretty much. And they say, hey, let's go in front of the line because we got the next watch, or we were about to go and see an anchor. And I remember saying that, I'm an IT. Nobody believes that we have the next watch. I'm just gonna, stay back here. And I was standing. If you remember, if you think about a repair locker and a DDG, I was just standing in midships right by repair 5. And I was talking to a female, and all of a sudden, this extremely loud noise, and the ship shook. From what I was told, of course I couldn't see it from the outside, but from the recounts of people that saw it from the outside, the ship came off the water and back down.
10 feet, right?
And that impact made me move towards that. I actually bumped into the girl that I was talking to, and then I hit myself in the bulkhead. And the first thing that came to my mind is the pier blew up, the refueling pier. But then I'm like, I'm standing in the starboard side, and this is where we're refueling. So I should be dead if that happened. As all this is going through my head, you could see the fire, smoke. I don't try to make light of it, but like the movies, when it's heading towards, the person in the movie where the screen and you see the smoke and the fire coming towards to that person. That's what it looked like to me. And then my first instinct is not go to GQ station, not do what I was trained, was save yourself, right? Like, I'm 19 years old, and I want to go top, outside so I could be, smoke, be able to breathe. And as I'm heading back aft, and a bunch of us are heading that way, the XO is coming from back aft, and he's saying, stay in the skin of the ship because we don't know if they have snipers. And go to your general, GQ station. We've been hit. And at that moment, then that's when I snapped, and I was like, okay, let me go to radio, because radio was my GQ station. I head down to radio, and my chief is already there, and there's an IT1 and IT2, and she looks at me and she says, I have an Alpha and a Bravo. Alpha and a Bravo means we have the two sides of the main safe if we need to go to emergency destruction, because that's our duty as ITs. If the ship is going to sink, which was what our fear was, then destruction has to happen. So she was like, go to your all repair locker. I used to be in repair too, out forward. But because I got qualified, I remember telling my LPO, what do I need to do to get out of the repair locker? And he said, get fully qualified in radio. And for a seaman, I was up to like the very last qualification before I was a supervisor. Just because I didn't want to be in a repair locker. But I still was trained in repair locker. So I went to repair 2, and they had an officer there, and he was directing everybody to go back after repair 3, because that became like the central damage control spot. So from there, I'm heading back again, and now I'm going through the same area that I was just standing, and now you can see the hole, the 40 by 60 feet hole, just cables sparkling all over the place, and smoke is clearing the smoke. So like you can see, because it's coming, the hole is so big that the smoke is leaving the ship. So you could see all the metal and the sparks and, blood and things like that. And again, if you think about a destroyer, you have After you go in the mess decks and you go to the scullery, there's like a small little part that is like the P-way between the scullery and actually hitting the main P-way of the starboard side. And there was a body there. And I don't know. The curiosity just got to me. And it was covered with a blanket. And I get on my knees and I lift it up. And it was Singleman Seaman gun. And the only reason why I recognize him is because of his name tag, because he has so much metal and things in his body that his whole body was swollen. Like you couldn't recognize his face. And I lost it. I just started crying. The 19-year-old came out of me. I just wanted to go home. I wanted to be around my mother. I mean, I didn't have no kids at the time. I wasn't married. So the most important person in my life, which she still is my mother. Right. And I was crying and I just kept saying, I want to go home. And someone tapped me. I don't remember who it was. They didn't say a name. And they said, he's dead. We have to save ourselves and the ship. And some people might say that sound cold because he was like, he's dead, like move on kind of thing. But it clicked on me. Like I still cried. I still had tears in my eyes, runny nose, but I got up and headed back to Repair 3. Once I got there, they literally were just using people to, hey, you take this P100 and go put it in this space so we could get the water out, and you go to this other compartment, you bring those broomsticks to help with the injured, or you grab literally buckets to go to all the compartments to throw water out. And for like the next hour and a half, that's all I was doing. I was more like of a messenger. We need you here. We need you to grab this. I need you to help bring this body to CCS because that's where they were putting all the injured, and even the people that were about to die. And then as I go to CCS, that's when I see Seaman Weberly, the guy that I was just training 30 minutes ago, and Doc was just giving him some morphine just so he could die peacefully, because he also had so many injuries and he was all swollen again. There was a lot of metal inside of him. And the next 2 hours, man, it was truly a blur. It just simply go here, go there. A few things that I want to highlight though is before the refueling and why we weren't, before refueling, we were doing drills, right? As you are out to sea. And we were setting GQ in like 12, 13, 14 minutes, just completely on sad, right? So much so that the CEO, I think one day we did GQ like 9 times and, try to set zebra on time. He was just pretty upset.
I remember those days.
But that day, with all that chaos, we set zebra within like 5 minutes. And I bring that up to say that we were trained constantly, right? And even my last deployment as a senior chief, I even wondered, I didn't say it to all the sailors, but I said it to myself, why are we doing this again? Even going through the Cole, even after experiencing the Cole. But one thing I could tell sailors and anybody that wants to listen to this, because I think it applies to a lot of things in life, not just training. Muscle memory is very underrated. Because we were able to say zebra that quickly. We were able to do the things that we did because we were constantly doing drills. We were constantly training. So, DC2 didn't have to tell me how to grab the hose because I knew how to grab the hose. I knew how to make that P100 work, right? Because I'd done it before, and it's because I did it so many times. So for those, like I said, 2 to 3 hours, which felt like an eternity, to be honest. It was just a constant moving here. And then whenever we would feel like things were kind of settling, someone will scream, flooding in this compartment, because again, we didn't have the 1MC. One of the lessons that was learned from the Cole was to have redundancy of the 1MC, because back then there was only one area as far as where the 1MC was, and when the bomb, it went away. It was destroyed. And so everything was done mostly by word of mouth and the old phones that we had back in those days. And yeah, I remember like kind of slowing down a few hours later, and then that's when the curiosity of like, let's see where people were at. Like as I was going and doing things, I remember we'll be like, oh, there's IT2, there is so and so. Okay, he's alive, she's alive, or he's injured but he's alive, you know. And there was a couple of people that I couldn't find, and then me and this OS2 Smitty, OS3 at the time, we decided to go to where the main area of the bombing, and we went, and we were, you know, the Master Chief, the CMC's office is right there in that P-way, and the floor only went like a couple of feet after the office, and we were like literally like hanging on to that last step to look into, like, because you could see like the decks because of the explosion. You could still see like a deck below it and the one below. And unfortunately, that's when you saw a couple of bodies in there, and including Seaman McDaniel's IT type, which he was the one that replaced me from FSA. And he was having some issues, and he wasn't in the wardroom anymore. They brought him down to work in the galley. And unfortunately, he passed away. So, yeah, it was just the things that I got to hear, like, you know, like Doc saying to other people, like, hey, I'm just gonna give this person morphine because there's nothing else I could do, or hear, you know, hey, did you hear the BMC has a broken leg, yet he's fully done in the fire party, and he's the first one in the fire party. Or hear about Chang telling one of the teams that they had to close the hatch, even though there was two bodies that they were still breathing, because you could see bubbles in the water, but it was either close that space or the ship might sink. You know, it's tough to understand those things as a 19-year-old, right? But I will say this is like we all went through it, like, you know, and then I saw so many things that I took with me, like from, you know, Seaman Taylor, who was an OS seaman, telling orders to a whole group of people, to a young officer in a corner crying because he didn't know what to do. Right, like that's where your personalities also come, because you can have training too, right? And I'm not trying to get political here, but we seen the videos of the cops that then go into the high school, right, into that school in Texas, right? They have training, yet a bunch of them did not go in, right?
Yeah, it happens.
So it also goes about personality, right? About what's in you. And I got to see that, man. I didn't do nothing heroic, man. I tell you that right now. I did what I was told to do. I did a scare. But I did see a lot of people making decisions and doing things that I look back today and I'm just like, wow, I was an odd back then, but now, like, when I knew the ramification, as I get older and I have a better appreciation on life as a whole. And I'm like, BMC with a broken leg is still going down the ladders and fully man. This is when we had the old OBAs. It wasn't even the scuba. And we're talking about the heavy joints. Like, you know, here he is.
Stomach.
Yes. Yeah. Here he is. He didn't care. Right. And that's the thing that I take from that, man.
Yeah. So only a few of us know what we'll do in those moments, you know, as well. Like I'm sure you like learn a lot about who you are, like no matter how, you know, long you've been in or whatever your rank is. Cause I did see that where it was like junior sailors, even junior engineers that were like more familiar with the plant are like telling chiefs like, hey, this is how we, realign water, or this is how we, get, water out of the space, and stuff like that. But one of the things I do want to touch on that you said 3 hours felt like an eternity, right? And the crazy thing about that is it was like 13 days of effort that y'all put in even after the 3 hours. So where did you sleep that night?
So that night, we tried a couple of times, like to sleep in the berthings, but I think two of them started getting water in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to the point that everybody was just like, "F that, we're just gonna sleep outside." So there's pictures again out there where we just slept in the flight deck or in the missile deck or anywhere that was outside on the ship. Mind you, standing watches because we had people in the 50 cows and looking after each other, right? Because we still having the threat that there might be people outside that were just waiting for us to come out and just snipe us, one by one kind of thing. Because we didn't know, like we at that moment we're thinking it's something that Yemen did, like the country itself. So like everybody, it's us against the world. That's another thing too, that mentality, us against the world, was there. Thankfully, it was not about hate. It was not just necessarily like just words. It was like, this is all we got. We got each other. So we have to do, if that means you got to stand watch, even though you've been up all day fighting, then you will do that. Someone will relieve you. And I'm going to keep it honest with you. I mean, there was people manding certain things that it was literally, you got called in that moment. I taught you how to do that right now. And now you're going to stand that watch.
Yeah. So we're like bare bones, and I'm gonna get into that too a little later. But one of the thing that you talk about, finding somewhere to sleep. But it's also another thing I'm thinking about with expectancy is like food. Y'all pretty much lost a lot of food, right? Like for like substance. Like
so we had the ship store. Whatever's in the ship store, that's what we ate for the first, I want to say 36 hours. It was Stinker Bar, Gatorade. Me and you had to share a Gatorade because there's only so many, right? There's just a small chip store. It's a DDG, and thankfully we had like very stocked ship store and the storage of the ship store that was like right in next to it, and nothing happened and there was more stuff there. But we were eating whatever was in the ship store because everything else was gone. So much so that the Yemenis, they try to bring us food like the next day. And again, we just so scared of what else could be here. We didn't want it. It was from like their 5-star hotel, and we still did not eat it.
Yeah, y'all wasn't.
We did not want it. Thankfully, there was a British ship that didn't care about the politics, right? And came and help us out until we finally had one of our own. I think it was on the third day that the USS Donald Cook was able to help, and then we had the fast team from the Marines, and they came to stand on watch. And I got to give it to the Marines, man. They trained so much. It was finally, because back then, if you think about it, we were not at war back then. 9/11 hadn't happened yet. So we were at peace at that time. So all these Marines been training for all these years just to train. So when they came on board, man, they took over all the 50 cows, and then they added more watches, and they had more, and they did not play, man. And by then we started feeling a little more comfortable. This is by day 3 now, though. So like the first 48, man, it was rough. It was just us, man. Ain't nobody thinking about shower. I'm not trying to be nasty. I'm just the reality of it.
And I was going to talk about that too, because these are things people don't think, but these are things that when we talk, like, again, these are things young me, reading a story about the Cole, I'm not thinking about people getting diarrhea, like no food sustenance, people not washing up. Now you're dealing with like intolerable, smells. And plus, like, you don't trust the water, right? CO didn't trust. At some point, I read the story where the CO pretty much said, let's not use the water. And then he go down to engineering and they got a fresh pot of coffee brewing. And he's like, what happened? Did y'all allow him potable water? And they like, yes, sir. We figured out a way. And then the captain, like, so how did that feel when y'all finally found out that? How long did y'all go without showers?
I want to say it was again. It seemed like
It's a blur.
everything started like going around by like the third day. It was like the third day was like very pivotal on like everything started like, okay, we're getting food, we're getting help from other ships, we're getting the fast team, like but yeah, like I mean, even again, water was just simply like the bottle of waters that we had in the ship store.
It's crazy, man.
You know,
It's crazy.
and so think about all that. Not able to eat. You're not eating enough food. It's 120 degrees because we're in Yemen. It's hot as you know what. I mean, we're talking about hot all the way into like midnight. It's like blazing hot, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about all these different things, and yet the decision came that we had to do colors. So I bring this up because at that moment, I want to say 50% of the crew, which was pretty young, was like, what are we doing? Why are we even worrying about doing colors?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember asking one of the chiefs, and he simply said, "Is we got to show them that this flag will fly no matter what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That we will still hold as much of a being in the military as possible, because we could, relax our coveralls and we could just be in like our white shirts and just tied up our coveralls or whatever. But when it was time for colors, we had to put the coveralls back on and all that stuff. So again, as a young 19-year-old who just want to go home, I'm not eating right, I'm not sleeping right, I'm hot. I don't want to do colors. I don't want to think about that. So to put my coverall back on just so I could salute the flag or whatever, I don't want to sound disrespectful right now, but that's just the true reality of what I was feeling at that time. And I can tell you right now, I wasn't the only
I'm
one.
sure a lot of the ship,
But to put it in that perspective, I didn't say a word after that.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was proud that we were doing it. That.
So radio, right? Something y'all didn't have power. Y'all didn't have power either, right? Because at some point, we got a brand new EMC. I think we had a brand new EMC that you guys had a brand new EMC that just made chief. So like we were trying to rid casualty power from aft. Like Damon, they trying to rid casualty power all the way from back aft to radio, right? So they tried it, but we had some grounds in the system, so we couldn't rig it because of the grounds. But y'all didn't have any power in radio?
No, we didn't, and thankfully, we always have this phone that is able to make phone calls no matter where we are in the world. And that's how the CO was able to communicate to the White House, to higher authorities, like, hey, we got bombed, because we didn't have any communications.
Yeah.
Which was another lesson learned, like redundancy as far as power for radio and things like that. But yeah, we didn't have any. And then like a couple of days later, we had these cell phones were brought up for us, so
I was going to ask
people could call their family. I was
going to ask you about that.
So you could call and because people dumb like me didn't update their page 2 before they left on deployment.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom never got a phone call. She's seeing the news because I sent her a picture of the Cole when we were in Malta, and you could see that big DDG 67. So she's seeing that same, literally almost the same picture in CNN, and it's like, there's a bomb. This happened. And she didn't know, and the Navy could not communicate to her for 3 days until I call and say, I'm alive.
And because this was before cell phones were like super popular, right? I think the iPhone came out in like 2007. So this was
it wasn't no iPhone. Yeah. It was I think Nokia cell phones back then, like that kind of thing. It was like 3 of them, and everybody had 3 minutes to talk to, because us as ITs, they gave it to us, and we had to like literally stand watch and have a log, and it'd be like, hey, and you couldn't make a second phone call until everybody went through.
How did that feel to finally get the phone call?
I was numb, brother. Like I I was like a machine. Like I couldn't even say much to my mother. Like I didn't have no emotions at that moment. I would just simply, she's like, "How you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm okay. I'm alive."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Did you hurt?" And I'm like, "No, I'm okay." And I had like, it was like 3 or 5 minutes, something like that, to that range that you could talk. And I think I only talked for like a minute. I just did not want to face the reality of like going into details or the fact that I knew I had to hang up and I'm going to still be in that situation.
Yeah.
I just did not want to deal with that. I was just simply, I'm alive. Let everybody else know that, I'm okay. I'm not hurt. I'm just tired and hungry. And I express those things and I just say, I love you. And I hang up the phone.
Yeah. So let's go back to the initial 3 days, right? So
Mm-hmm.
no alarms, right? We can't trust any of the alarms in engineering. It's no 1MC and no internal phones pretty much at all. So we relying on bare bones, old school, like you said, word of mouth, that kind of communication, right? So now also the way I'm thinking is like a lot of rates, a lot of jobs, a lot of rank doesn't matter anymore, right? We pretty much, I was watching a video where CMC said I had to go from my CMC hat to pretty much being an HM.
Which if you think about it, and like how life might have it, it was a blessing because he was the extra corpsman. Like there was so
Yeah.
many things going on that you were in a DDG, you had one corpsman, you had a HMC, you had an HM3, and then they had like a little seaman that wanted to be an HM.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't count; he was in the deck department. So yeah, the CMC, I saw him more in his function as a corpsman than I saw him as a CMC. Not because he was not present, because he was dealing with, and at least the first 48, he was dealing with bodies. You were injured. You like some of the things that I told you, like the doc said that he just needed morphine. One of them was him. It wasn't the HMC. It was the CMC that said this person is about to
Mm-hmm.
die. So let's just give him. You see what I'm saying? So he literally took his hat off as the CMC and became the corpsman. And then to your point, as far as like some rates, I mean, love my OSs, but we're not going anywhere. So what are the OSs doing?
Yeah.
It's like, so a lot of us had to fall back into the sense of like, you have DC training, so you will be either standing watches with manning any of the different guns and stuff, or you will be part of engineering. Like engineering and weapons were the two things happening.
Yep.
And then we had us as ITs and a little bit of to the side because we had the phones or whatever. But that only came after the third day or whatever. But the first 2 days, it was literally just defend the ship whatever we could. So you stood certain watches in the bridge, midships and back aft, or you were doing DC related stuff.
Yeah.
And like for me, I helped the corpsmen. They requested a couple of volunteers and I don't know why I volunteered, but I did. For those that passed away, to go through their pockets and take out their personal stuff. So I help out with that. So that was pretty much the job. So it was either helping the corpsmen with those that were injured or actually dead, help with DC stuff, or just be manned up as
Yeah.
far as guns and stuff.
The thing I think about when we think about CMC taking off the CMC hat, and putting on the corpsman hat, is like when I really think about it, CMC never really took off the CMC hat. CMC did what CMC needed to do as a CMC in that moment, and like you said, it was a blessing that CMC had that, in the toolbox. You know what I'm saying? To be
Absolutely.
able to do that, man. That's just like always being ready. Cause I think about baby Doc, right? I think about the young HM that walks out of medical, right? Looking for Chief. Right. And when I think about the young HM walking out of medical, and this happened, for the listeners, this happened. Like a young HM walks out of medical, like, where is HMC? At this moment, not knowing that HMC is up topside, like giving morphine to different sellers and stuff like that. But also in the mix of this, we said it was like early child. It's the Chiefs. Did they get locked in the Chiefs mess at some point in time?
Yes.
Okay.
Because if you look at the how the ship is, the impact was so big, and part of like the whole galley was literally destroyed. So all of that stuff is right next to the cheese mess. So all that stuff pushed into the cheese mess.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there were a handful of them that were like trapped there, and you know they had to find ways to get out. And I'll mention this, and if anybody heard this story before 2011 when I wasn't a chief yet, they will tell you that I'm saying the same thing I said before that, before I became a chief. I saw a lot of people crying. I saw a lot of people discouraged. I saw a lot of people scared. I didn't see that for any of the chiefs. And I tell you why. As I talked to them through the years, is they all admitted, yes, we had our moments, but we went somewhere where you guys couldn't see us.
Mm.
Other chiefs knew who was crying, who was ready to go home, who was not ready. But us, the crew, I didn't see it. And I was around a lot of them because I was all over the place. Not because I was doing anything great, just simply I was a messenger of one thing or another, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of the most proudest moments as a chief now that I am as a master chief, and one that's been wearing khakis for 11 years now, almost 12. I always look back to that. Just two very important things in my life that always wanted me to become a chief. One was getting to the recruiting office and seeing a chief, a gunner's mate, wearing the Johnny Cashes with the shiny anchors on the collar, and that uniform to this day is the most flyest uniform. I'm fortunate that we got away from it. So I wanted to be a chief then, and then seeing the actions of the chiefs on the Cole. Nobody's perfect. I'm not sitting here, and I don't want, if a young sailor's here, oh, here they go, chiefs talking about chiefs and how they just walk on water. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I didn't see any of that. Maybe if someone else did see them cried or whatever, I just saw a lot of, we need to do this. Like I said, the person that told me why we flying that flag was the chief. So I know a lot more now because once I became a chief, I started asking these questions from all these chiefs that retired, and some of them were still in at the time, and they share a lot of the stories with me because they had PTSD just like I do. So we share a lot of those things. So yeah, that always stays with me, and why I always wanted to wear anchors.
Yeah, it's just everything that you're saying just make me think about when if we strip like, when you watch like movies, for instance, and they get rid of all technology, everything, like what do we have left? Like how do we survive, right? And it's like, so if we get rid of everything, we fall to whatever it is, like you said, like we fall to our training and whatever it is our instincts are, and then we get to see people like move in whatever their purpose is, right? And to hear that about like the Chiefs mess, that like restores faith, and to hear about the junior sellers, it restores faith in me sometime, a person that sometime, be like, man, we wouldn't be ready. I think a lot of us think like that, man. People today wouldn't be ready for this if this would happen. And I'm sure people probably thought like that then, but in that moment, you see people step up to whatever it is that their purpose are. And that's like magical. That's magical to me.
So I saw that question. So I'm sorry. I saw that question somewhere in the last couple of days about, if conflict happened, if something really pop off, are we ready? And my only answer to that person was, we might not be ready as far as equipment. We might not be ready even in training, because for an IT, I could tell you a system comes out and we don't have the school for it until like 2 years later. We're so behind. Right? Yeah. But as far as people, we're ready. I'm always going to believe that we instill on each other, the very basics, and we push each other. And then when you see your brother or your sister having to go through something and they're going through it with you, we will be ready to whatever equipment that we have. We might not have the capabilities to fight that enemy the same way they fight in us because they might have more capabilities than us, but it's not for lack of trying. So I will say that, and I might be nostalgic here, or I'm just trying to make the Navy sound like the greatest Navy on earth. And I know we have many flaws, but I feel like because of the people, I'm willing to go to fight with any country.
Mm-hmm. Damon, you had a question?
Yeah, well, not really a question, man. I was just been just thinking and listening to you guys go back and forth a little bit, man. And what I was thinking about, man, like when it comes to the damage control portion of this, man, like DC and fighting fires and flooding and all that, is that every time for the whole world to try to understand this a little bit, like every time we run a drill on a ship, we do a heat stress, right? We got to make sure everything heat stress, making sure everything is good to go. So when sailors go down there, they don't get overheated and all this type of stuff, right? So I say this because we talking about 120 degrees first off,
Mm-hmm.
right? 120 degrees. But guess what? They going down and getting it done, right? So first off, the cold changed a lot of ways we do things today,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the reason for that is because you got ships that have collisions, you got ships that have all this stuff, but guess what? They are worried about one thing, though. If you have a collision, you probably worry about flooding, right? We talking about the cold, man. We are worried about flooding. We're worried about firefighting. We are worried about people being trapped. Every piece of equipment that damage control have was used for the cold. Everything.
Yep. Even the P100.
And even the P100s, every single damage control equipment was used for this, right? And it's crazy, man. I mean, and we talking about they had a scene chief I think he retired now, and he was part of the cold crew, and he was talking about, he got interviewed, and he was talking about at whatever type of way for 96 hours straight, the ship was either doing something with firefighting, something with flooding, or something. It was something that was going on. They was doing for like 96 hours straight. They had something to do. When it happened, he was in General Workshop, and he was talking about how he came up. Because when you come up on the DDG, you come up and you come by the chief mess right there. And he was hearing like the chiefs was saying how they was trapped. And his wording was, it didn't affect that he knew they wasn't trapped. The thing that got to him was the fact that they was talking about what was wrong with him. And he said that's what he remembered the most, like if they had what kind of injury they had.
Because some of them were injured.
Because they were saying that stuff also, what type of injury they had. And that's crazy. And tomorrow, I wanted to ask you, did you know our Force Master Chief, Greg Carson?
Carson? No, I didn't get to meet him.
So he was an OS on the ship, right? And he was telling this story in our DC class. Like we had this DC class, and he was telling this story. I'm telling you, when he got done talking about this story, it was like no dry eyes in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he was talking, he was pretty much there as the Force telling us how important, damage control is and all that type of stuff. And he was telling this, man, it was, man, horrific, man, on what the human mind and the body can endure and can take. And at the end of the day, like you said, man, people, we're gonna get it done. You know what I mean? Like you're right, equipment may fail, but we're gonna be there ready.
So I tell you, it's not too many people that love the IT rating like I do. I could have had the opportunity to go command. I could have got the opportunity to go warrant. I could have got the opportunity to go any other path, right? But I always said ITCM or bust, right? Like we're either gonna get here or retire. And I say that to say this though, although I love that, I understood on a very early stage in my career, for better or worse, because 17 people did die, 39 were injured, the importance of the fact that we all damage control. If you are in a U.S. vessel, you better take it serious. You better learn. And if anybody has a surface pen, that's why we first start with DC. As a East-West coordinator on my destroyer, I would fail anybody that did not pass the DC section. Like you didn't even go to the next sections, because if you don't understand how to fight the ship and take care of the ship, then I don't need you. Because someone else can learn how to do something with your machinery as far as IT, how to set a radio. We have SOPs, we have all this. But if you don't know how to work, a pump, or at least at the very far, how to deal with a hose or how to, what hatches need to be closed as you send in GQ, then then you're doing all of us a misservice. So I say that my love for IT and saying that I think it's the best rate in the world, but I also I understand that to be in the Navy, I also need to know my DC.
Yeah, I think it's one of our primary professions, you know? And I when I talk to sellers, I'll be like, yo, would you go to a surgeon and get surgery if they told you, hey, I'm not that proficient in doing this surgery? Would you trust them to do it? No. Right. I'm like, well, you're the person that's supposed to perform surgery, you know, on the ship if something, you know, goes wrong here. You know, like we have to be able to trust each other to do these kind of things, man. I think about it all the time. And man, I just deleted about 16 points because y'all made them all about DC and engineering and just how we can't take these things for granted, but also how a lot of the things that happen on a Cole, right? So the beauty of this book that this captain wrote is it puts you in like the pretty much eyesight of everything, right? So I feel like, and now me being a seller that was on a DDG, I could kind of walk through the ship with them, right? So what happened after Cole is, in my opinion, now that I've understand the story, is it seemed like a lifestyle change for a seller when it comes to training, when it comes to the drills and everything like that. I feel like this is one of the more important things that happen for modern Navy because I feel like my whole career is a byproduct as far as all the training I got for deployments and preps and stuff. I feel like a lot of that is a byproduct of what happened on the Cole.
So I talked to a few of the parents of those that passed away, unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
especially for ITCM Guana. I'm very close with his mother because I was very close to him. And I always tell her that. I said, your son didn't die in vain. And I know that, you know, a lot of people say that, especially death that happens in the military, you know, like unfortunately that IT2 that passed away the other day and the Carl Vincent, you know, when they go and tell the parents, you know, like your son and I'm not saying that he did. I'm just saying that, you know, they'll tell her that. But I tell her all the time, the Navy learn. And unfortunately, in life as a whole, and even more in the military, things have to happen, something this drastic, for change to be applied, right?
Yeah.
So those 17 that were killed and the 39 that were injured, what happened is the fact that the Navy looked and say we need to change all these different procedures, and we're still learning. And you know, we had the Fitzgerald and we had the McCain, and you know, there's still stuff that we kind of retracted back, so we had to go back to square one again. But definitely, like I know that there is. I mean, the simulator and Gray Lakes is based on the Cole.
Yep.
You know, it's literally the Cole. What happened on the Cole is the simulator now. For those that don't understand, in boot camp, as you're going through it, and there's a simulator of, because it's part of the battle station, is the Cole. So yeah, I agree with you. Like, I mean, there's training to this even being taught to this day that is related to that, and it's because of people before me that went through it. The most senior people stay long enough to pass those lessons, and you know, people like you guys then picked it up and continue to add to it as system progresses, and you go to different ships and get to, you know, deal with different sailors. But yeah, it's a lot to change. I mean, something simple as the one, not simple, but something as is the 1MC. We didn't have redundancy. You would think that you would think that would be so, like when you talk to someone from today and like they didn't have redundancy or something so important. Yeah, we didn't have redundancy. It took the Cole for it to have redundancy, for radio to have redundancy of power, you know?
Yeah. So did this make you stay in? Is this what made you stay in?
Two things. I had the best thing that happened in my life, which is my baby girl being born, who is now 20, not a baby girl anymore. It is in my eyes. So I needed a job. I need a steady job. So that was like one of the reasons. But then we were not at war. I keep saying that. We were not at war when the Cole happened. And I remember talking to other people as I went to counseling. And one of the counselors, you know, we were talking, and I'm trying to like make sense of it. Like, why would they do that to us? And she said, she was just like, who is the one nation that's in every conflict, whether we like it or not? where does the first nation, the other nations talk to when they need help? So we're the good guys. For better, I mean, like we have issues in our country. Don't get me wrong. We have so many things, but
Yeah.
we are the good guys, right? For the most part. So there's people that just don't like, because so in my eyes, I remember as I go into counseling, I find a purpose. Like I need to stay in because I'm doing more than just getting money for college.
Yeah.
This is a career that I have a calling now because I feel like I survived for a reason. I could have died if I went with the two other ITs that went ahead of the line when they said, let's go to Chow, because they both passed away. And I didn't because I stayed back. I could have died if I would have not been injured because of FSA. And the guy took. So I'm here for a reason. I'm not saying that I'm here to save the world. I'm not here to invent cure to cancer, right? But I feel like I've been blessed, and I felt like, let me use that what I learned there, and you know, like I tell Guana's mother, I just want to make them proud, especially since I lost. It used to be 5 of us that hang out all the time in Liberty because we had the same duty section and everything, and I'm the only one that survived out of the 5.
Man, damn, I gotta delete another topic because I was gonna ask about. I was just gonna highlight friends, right? So when you got all of this, and for the listeners, I'm just such an analytical thinker. For the listeners, we talk about heavy topics, right? But I want y'all to know I'm an analytical thinker, and we talked before we started, and I'm sometimes direct about certain things. So nothing I'm saying is in jest right now, and we understand what we talking about. I just the way that I think and talk might not sound as empathetic as I am right now. You know what I'm saying? But I was thinking about friends. So you got all of this, right? That just happened. And then as much as like Damon talked about DC efforts, right? You talked about DC efforts. We talked about engineering. We talk about only having like one generator and then losing that generator. As soon as we lose a generator, we got flooding. Then we get the generator back up. Then we lose it again because we can't monitor the fuel and all this. But while all of this happening, like you said in the beginning, like it's people scanning the ship looking for people. Like, me and Damon, we talk about boat booze, right? We say it in jest. It's funny. It's a joke. But this happens. Like as much as you trying to save, like quote unquote, what the person said to you, save it. We got to save ourselves and save the ship. It was somebody that day, not to be funny, but it was somebody that day trying to find that boat boo. Like, where's my girl at?
So I'll give you an example. The mother of my daughter, we were not dating back then. She was seeing someone else, but I care about her. I was already looking at her, right? Like I was into her.
Yeah.
That's one of the people I was looking for. Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's in the mix of me bringing a bucket from repair 3 to a compartment is I was going through it. I was scanning around for those that I care about, including her. Right. So as I remember when I told you early on that I went with Smith, OS3 to see where this person was and that person was, it's because of that. That's where I found Guana. And I keep mentioning him because he was my closest friend. We had import duty in Norfolk together. We had the same section. We were in the same section on the way. We were in the same section when we pulled into port overseas. Like we did everything together, right? And again, another thing we had in common, he was from Texas, but he was Latino. He spoke Spanish. He helped me, get the transition, as we were talking earlier, as someone that's literally for 5 years in the US. So, I'm getting accustomed to the culture. He held that bridge, right? So he was really close to me. And I remember seeing him like wrapped up in metal, like, and just like looking at him and just be like, why did I do this to myself? But I had to look for those, like in the small ship, you get to know everybody. I knew everybody. Like I knew who everybody was. I didn't know
in 5 months.
Yeah. In 5 months. Pretty much, I didn't know every detail, but I knew everybody. Right. But he was one of those that I knew who he really was. Like, it was about 20 to 30 people that I knew, like, we hang out, that we did things together. And he was one of those. And so, yeah, the human part and the friendships, like, you know, the relief that I will find when I was like, Sarah Gomez, who was my sponsor, you know, seeing her, I lost all military baron, and I just gave her a hug, like, you know, she's alive, you know. The mother of my daughter, again, we were not dating or anything like that. She probably didn't even know that I liked her, but I did, and I hugged her when I saw her, you know what I mean? And but then it was just looking, and then to sit there as a 19-year-old and have to, like, when kind of things come down at night, that you could try to get some sleep, and all those thoughts come to your head. I'm not going to see that
Still
person
thinking
again.
about it.
You know, I'm not, or I saw him in this condition, you know. Because to this day, like, when I think about Gunn, the one that I had to open the blanket, that's how I remember him, unfortunately. Like, I don't remember the memories of us hanging out. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. And these are deep friendships, because I'm still friends with people from our first ship. So these are like lifelong connections. We got, like, we kids, you know, pretty much, like, we would be in college right now acting a fool, but we decided to join the Navy. So these are, like, great friendships. So it's two things I want to talk about real quick before we talk about PTSD. But before we talk about that, I want to talk about, I got, like, a couple quick hits that I want to kind of ask you if you remember. But before that, right, the Chang, this for Damon and you, Amaury. At one point, the Chang in CCS in front of everybody asked the captain, "Are we going to lose the ship?" You know, so that's how real it got that day. I can't imagine that. You know, I can't imagine being on the EPSI console and hearing my Chang ask the captain, "Are we going to lose the ship?" And then I can't imagine being I can't imagine being a Chang and having to ask that question. But then I can't imagine being a captain and having to answer that question, right? And that's the power in the COs. You know, people, you know, COs don't always get, like, the grace that they deserve, because it's like you're a CEO, so people gonna love you, they gonna hate you, whatever. But a lot of people depending on that motivation that's all the captain needed to say. Like, we not losing this ship. We not losing it. We not gonna lose this ship. And then that expectation, like, if my captain says that, I'm good. I'm good to go, you know? But I just can't imagine how hopeless I would have felt right after Chang. And not a knock on Chang. That's a real moment in life. Like, after Chang asked that question, like, damn, Chang just asked CO. I'm just thinking about me being an EM2 in CCS and hearing Chang say, "Are we about to lose the ship?" Like, damn.
I mean, yeah, and like I said earlier, I faced that reality when I went down to radio as my first GQ station, and my chief is talking about, we are about to set, you know, the emergency destruction plan. That only happens.
It's a wrap.
Yeah, exactly. That only happens if the ship is going to sink. And here we have, and I'm looking, you know, I'm an E1 with, you know, 3 months of sea duty experience, and I'm looking at a chief who, for those that don't understand, like, there's some people that till to this day look at chief in a high plateau. Back when I came in back in 99, you didn't even talk to chiefs. It was just, they're like gods, right? And to hear your chief tell you, "I'm getting ready for emergency destruction. I'm just waiting for the CO." Again, like you said, the importance of the CO. He's worrying about flooding. He's worrying about maybe snipers out there. He's worrying about fire. Yet he still has to think about, well, if I decide to do this, I have to make that phone call or radio at some point, because they have to destroy. One more thing that he has to worry about, right? So yeah, I was terrified to hear that. Like, that's one of the things that, like, hit me. Like, this is, I mean, you see the ramifications, so you're like, this is legit. But that's, like, really one of those statements that is like, this is no shit. Like, we could sink. Like, you know, because she is the subject matter expert, my chief, and she's like, "We're ready for destruction."
Yeah,
you know.
And let me add to that. I think it's for the chief engineer to even ask that question, right? You got to think about how much damage it really was.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know.
Like, really put yourself there. It had to be to that level for that question to be asked, because when that question get asked, that means it's time to stop efforts. You know, I mean, like we are here, then we stopping flooding, we fighting fires, we doing all that. To ask that question, that meaning we about to give up efforts. So the captain, I know he made the right call and made the call, and then that probably uplifted, you know, the crew and everything right there, man. Like that was big, man.
Yeah, them damn engineers are lining that water to make coffee at night, though, man. Man, engineers, yo, just making the call. You know what I'm saying? But hey, so Amaury, so at some point though, y'all realize it's a local on the ship, right? Y'all still got the husbanding agent. I don't know if you remember this as a seaman, but the husbanding agent was on the ship after everything, right?
See, I didn't know that, but now when you think about it, because the way the port was, right, the way how weird the pier was, and like I told you, the setup was like a U and land, and it's not your regular, it wasn't your regular pier, it was like a dock, and we just like docked in to refuel. Then it makes perfect sense because they usually come on board with in a boat, and then they take you in until you completely done or whatever, I to this day they can't tell me right or wrong or if I'm right or whatever. But I always felt like when we went through the Suez Canal, we let vendors come on board, and the ones that came on ours, they stay there for a while. Like it was like from I want to say 08 to like 2000. And although we were escorting them wherever they went, they will do stupid stuff like we were supposed to take him to berthing, and then they will like walk and like go through the galley instead of them. Be like, hey, come on, no, it's this way. My point is, I always had the suspicion that some of that intel was passed to
Scoping.
to those folks, right? Because they were on board. And another thing they changed, right? Like nowadays, when vendors come on board ships, they stay in a very centralized location. They don't wander around like they did back then, right? But yeah, I always felt like that, and I didn't even know that we had the housing agent still on board, which is crazy when you think about it, because here we have a civilian that is just doing their job, and they going through this horrific situation with us.
Yeah, and it's horrific because, like you said, it's us against the world, right? So now we got this husband agent on board with a briefcase. So the husband and agent got a damn briefcase. The whole ship, Amaury already said they don't even want to eat the food, right? So the husband and agent, we figure out we got this husband and agent on board with a briefcase. What do we want this husband and agent to do? Open this damn briefcase. Let's see what's in it. So that was like a big deal, big story. But damn, imagine being they kind of prep for like if it's a bomb, husband and agent open a briefcase, nothing's in there. Husband and agent still, I think at some point can't leave until.
That part I do remember. That part I do remember that he couldn't leave. They had him into like, you on lockdown. Like, we don't know you, we don't trust you, so we're not gonna let you out of here until we get a clearance from like somewhere outside. Not even like other Yemenis, like from the US saying that guy is okay to let them go.
So his life probably changed forever, after this too.
Yeah,
all right.
He probably me.
Yeah, he's like, hey, baby, like yesterday I went to a ship, a lot of stuff, like not to downplay it, but like now I'm here. I almost got killed on that ship, But all right, so we passed 3 days, we passed 4 days. You running like, you remember this? You running one crew with the CO doing quarters? You remember this?
Yes.
Okay.
So for me, so a little bit in between, we had finally divers came, Navy divers, because we had so many bodies that were in metal, that were under the water, things like that. So they had to come and get those bodies out. And then thankfully, like I said, we had the Donald Cook DDG 75, and then we had a supply ship, the USNS Candom. And what they started doing was they will switch crew. So what they will do is they'll send 10, 15 of their crew members, and then 10 or 15 of us will go to either the Donald Cook or the Candom, so we could eat a warm meal, take a warm shower, use the phone, just kind of like sleep. Like, I went to the Candom, I went to the supply ship, and if any of you ever been to a supply ship, the crew's small and it's majority civilians. So like they live in the good life. Like I actually, as a seaman, was
Yeah.
living like I slept on an actual like stateroom because that's the things that they have. But so we had that for a few days, right? Like I don't want to say it was like the fourth or fifth day, and then they started swamming the crew, and the CO will stay with whatever crew was there. Like he didn't leave the ship. Like he didn't
Yeah.
go to the cook, he didn't go to the Candom, he didn't go to any of the other ships. And I want to say the XO as well and the CMC. Like there was just certain key members that did not leave that ship at all.
Yeah.
Um, and once the divers came out, and they brought all the bodies, I was asked first if I wanted to escort Seaman Guana body back to the U.S., which meant that I would have left early. And at first I said yes, and then I said no, and then I was told to do it because he was my closest friend. So I left the ship on the 20th. So I didn't stay all the way to November 2nd when the rest of the crew went. And for what I recall, though, for when they came back to Norfolk months later, is that they had like a skeleton crew. Like the Navy sent one of those nav admins literally asking for people that wanted to volunteer. And that was very specific on what raid. They didn't need an IT because they didn't need comms. They just needed engineers. They needed OSs. They needed like a couple of people. But if I recall correctly, the CO did not leave that ship at no point.
So the CO did not want to leave the ship at all, which was powerful, right? So the CO wanted to ride the ship back pretty much, right? Being tugged, being pretty much carried out there, towed away. The CO wanted to stay with the ship. And that was a crazy kind of wager for the CO to make a decision between being with his crew or being with the ship. CO called a mentor. Mentor said, stay with your ship. Let the XO, let the CMC fly back, with the crew. We fast forward a little bit, but that is something to note.
Okay.
CO wanted to stay with the ship, and then at some point he was told go. Because it was a suicide risk. His higher ups were like, "Yo, we don't want you to still be on that ship because you'll be alone. At some point, you're gonna be alone with all your thoughts and memories, and we want you off the ship." But CO did not want to. And I'm gonna ask you a couple questions about the CO a little later. But the CO did not want to leave that ship, which was inspiring to me. So, real quick though, so main one, you lost it, right? Main one was lost. Chief's mess, was it lost or like severely damaged?
It was unusable. It just
okay.
Yeah.
Supply, aux 2, mess decks, general workshop, main 2 was flooding, and number 3 gen was the only generator we had, but for some period of time, no TLIs, no we couldn't really maintain it, so we just lost it every time till we could get it back up. And at some point, Damon, we had to use PASP and we had to use the RASP to like supply air to 3 gen. Right? I don't know if that was the first. Do you know if that was the first time we did that?
I'm not sure, but I do remember we never do it like that though. Like hardly ever we started with the PASP and RASP. So I think that's one of those things that probably came out of that. I'm not sure, so I'm not gonna put and say that's what happens, but I probably something to look into though. But
so during a lot of this time, we still 12 shipmates that you can't find, right? It's still 12 shipmates that we pretty much know are in the wreckage that we need to find. And I remember just reading that at a point, the shipyard pretty much said, hey, as much as we love and respect you guys, it's not our job to go through the wreckage and look for bodies. So at a certain point, the captain got to a point where him and XO almost were going to handpick sailors that they thought were like able to handle picking shipmates out of the wreckage. And then FBI came over and said, no, we have people with Tyvek suits. We can do this, right? And another stand-up thing that the CO did to me was the CO thought about, outside of like how many people like you had already saw a shipmate, that passed away in a wreckage, the CO thought about, I don't want to devastate none of my sailors, so I'm going to identify everybody or whatever. And man, that got to be a toll But one of the things I want to ask you, if you remember, do you remember the smell?
So there's some controversial here. I have the utmost respect for the commanding officer and the executive officer and even the CMC, because they try their best to say it was the food and the reefers that was just be getting bad. No, it was dead bodies smell.
That's what I thought too. That's what
and they tried, and I don't know if it was just simply let's not compile to it. I mean, but they were very adamant. I'm talking about like we got orders, like because we started doing quarters by like the third or fourth day, like by division and by departments, and it was like, no, don't say it's the bodies, it's the food, it's the reefers and the food. And I come from a very poor country, Dominican Republic, and I was very poor. I know what trash and food smell like. That has just been sitting there for a while because I had to eat a lot of the things that today, thankfully, I don't have to eat because they're just bad, right? And I also know the smell of flesh because my country, when I was little, we went through like a small little civil war kind of thing, and then I saw people injured and things like that. So I know flesh and what the smell of a decomposed body was, and it was pretty bad. It was It got to a point where you didn't want to walk through a certain section of the ship. That like the midship area, the little bit that you could still walk on the starboard side, people will literally come from top and go all the way up forward and go through hatches there to go forward, and then come back on top if they have to go because the smell was just too much. And unfortunately, it's I know that part of it was not for you to psychologically think of the fact that there's dead bodies still there, but you couldn't help it. That to know that is not rotten potatoes or like rotten chicken. It's a body. It's being decomposed.
Like And like you said, we give COs, I think most captains kind of look at the ship and all the sailors like, not like their children, but it's like a fatherly kind of like grace, fatherly kind of love. So it's like, yo, we want to protect you, but we're adults. Like we know, what it is that we're experiencing. So another one of my quick kind of thoughts. Do you remember the shipyard worker slamming the toolbox and like creating like a loud bang and it shaking up like some of the people on the ship and the captain pretty much had to go out there like, hey, we can't deal with.
So I don't remember. So in his book, as he's talking about it, while we were still in Yemen, or that's now when we past the Gulag and repair.
That was in Yemen.
Okay. So I don't recall that, right? That specific, but I do know to this day, me and plenty of other people cannot get a loud noise without
it's crazy
flaring up, whether it is simply as our reaction being more extreme that you might have if you hear, something pop, or simply as like getting really upset with someone. In that case, in that situation where you feel it's unnecessary, the two of you might just simply be like, hey man, that's kind of loud. Like, chill. Yeah. Me, I might get like, what the F are you doing? Like I will get like really mad because it will bring me to that place.
I got a couple more things, and then I want to talk life after the Cole, or life after, you got back. So at some point, some of these things, I don't know if you remember, but it's for note for the podcast. Like a general came on board and was handing out coins, Damon. Like it was a like it was a ship visit. This is during the fallout of the Cole. You get a general on board giving out coins to the captain, like pretty much has to say like, hey, I don't think this is the best time to be doing this, right? You get Fifth Fleet surgeon trying to use recovery of bodies, trying to use the recovering bodies from the wreckage as a training opportunity. Like, hey, I'm gonna bring some people over here. This is a good time for training. That should make you turn your damn, nose up, right? Like, patches, ball caps, belt buckles, right? So this is, like Amaury been saying, like they going over to other ships, doing things, getting coveralls washed and, certain things like that. And the sailors from the Cole are starting to lose like things. Like ball caps, patches, belt buckles, because these sailors from these other ships are like, yo, this is a part of history, so they want to take a small piece of history. So at some point, the CO got to tell the other ship COs like, hey, my sailors, things are coming up, missing. And I know we talked about food, helping getting help with food and stuff. But at some point, and I don't know if you was here for this. Were you there for the tuna snack packs?
I was not. Like I said, I consider myself very lucky that I left, earlier because I had to look. I got to look to the ship. But I have heard some of those stories. I haven't heard that one, but I have heard like the stealing of things from other ship and people coming on board. Like there was literally, and I'll say it really quick. Like one of the guys that came and that when they requested extra people to come, that one like was trying to rip up like literally like a chair from like CCS or something like that, like because they wanted to take it with them, kind of thing.
Yeah. So you talked about still doing colors, right? So, and then we talked about the CO having pretty much one division, like pretty much this ragtag group of people. Like, hey, we got to do this today. We're gonna focus on this. You go over here and do this. At some point, the command got to get back reestablished into like departments and have department. This is important. Like, and as I'm going through and thinking about these kind of things, and it's more than a ship that took a hit, sailors that we lost. Is how do we recover from this? How do we be resilient as a crew? And what decisions do we make that we know people might not like at this time, but we still got to make them, right? So one of those decisions is at some point, let's reestablish ourselves as a department, into departments and have departmental quarters. And let's start like letting people remember like, hey, you're an engineer, go do, engineering stuff and stuff like that. So that stuff was super important. Now, one of the last things I want to talk about the day and the fallout after that day was because I was just thinking about this in my head, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. Was like, but like in reality, like how many people like in that moment, right? And not to desensitize anything, but how many people in that moment were like, I'm ready to leave. I can't take this. I want to go.
So I was one of those. I think I said it a few times now. What I will say though, I heard it here and there. I didn't hear as often as you might think. So I'll say that much, right? As the day progressed, yes, as we started normalizing a lot of things, people still became angry. Like I just want to get out of here. Like why this and not more people coming in? So I will say that at the beginning, when it was just us, you barely heard it.
Flight.
We were just focused on saving each other and saving the ship. So it was very rare to hear. You will have moments like me where I just kneeled down and I was crying. I wanted to leave because I saw one of my friends being dead. But you would just have those would be like small moments. But as the day became longer and we would just sit in there, we get to go to other ships and maybe have a one night of sleep and shower. But in our minds, we're like, okay, why can they come and have someone else and they just take us, right? And the more of the younger you were, that you were not in those overall meetings where the CEO is telling the department heads and the chiefs like, this is what I want and this is this. Like the younger crew, which is majority of us, you really think about it in a DDG, the crew is really young, and that hasn't changed in 20 years. The crews are usually really young. We're all looking like, okay, we did our part. The ship is afloat. It's not going to sink. We save as many lives as possible. Why we're not out of here? And I left early, like I said, compared to other people. But I started to see that sentiment as the day progressed. Like, I'm not going to go as far as there was going to be mutiny and anything like that. But it was getting uncomfortable where it was a constant, speaking to us almost daily from the chiefs and divos or whatever. And that, they'll come, they're making plans, it's not that easy, that they don't want to leave just the ship. And as we learned more and we got more briefs through the months and years, it was just getting that blue marlin, getting the huge ship to come pick the ship up, because what the U.S. Navy did not want to do, and I think it was the right decision, even though I would have not liked it to be there all the way to November 2, was leave that ship on its own in Yemen. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. So at some point, and it's a whole lot more I could talk about, man, like so much, but I want to move forward a little bit. Oh, man. So at some point, it's a new CO, and I don't know if you remember this, but this term on those, and I don't even know if it's
Mhm.
true, but CO said it. He said at some point the new CO says the pity party is over. Like after everything's done, maybe like whenever that turnover happens, the new CO, y'all might be in a building or something at this point while the ship's being repaired. New CO comes and the pity party is over. It's time to get back to work.
Absolutely, that was said.
Okay. How was that? So I'm not going to talk about like my
Mm-hmm.
opinions about what that means, because that means a lot, right? And as a leader, I know what that means in every facet, right? But how was that received from the crew at that time?
So some of that at the time when that was said is when I think it was a frigate that was decommissioned, and what the Navy did was they gave us, the old crew, options of either staying on the ship, or, and some didn't even have options, or going somewhere else. So like if you still had sea duty, if your rate is 4 years and you still have 2 left, they send you to another ship. And like young bucks like me, they gave me the option. They were like, you could stay here and we're going to send you to school. We're going to treat you like a pre-com, or you could go somewhere else. I wanted to go to San Diego. And for some reason, there was no billets for a seaman with only a sea bag to go to San Diego. So I was like, if you don't have billets for San Diego, I don't want to go to another ship in Norfolk. I'll stay here. But anyway, so we get these new crew members from this decommissioned frigate, right? As the CEO, the new CEO is coming in, and it what it did was just kind of put us, them and us.
Yeah.
Yes. Because not that that new crew felt that way. They didn't. They were very helpful, but we felt like they came with him. And after he said that, it was like, this is not a pity party. This is like real shit that happened. Like, this is, we all have a grieving process, and you might grieve and it only takes you a couple of months. I might take years, right? Like, we all different. But yeah, it didn't go well. And then, and there was a threat to the ship while it was in Gula. So we went to like literally port and starboard for your duty sections, because we had so many watches, because the Pascagoula did not have any, like no boats on the water for security. So we had extra watches. So there's a lot of like DUIs that happened. There was a lot of drunk, like it went bad, like really quick. Like people, between what happened and then the long hours and all that stuff, it was a rough like 4 or 5 months after we got back.
And y'all still hadn't received awards for deployment, I think, right?
Yeah. Everything was really slow. That's what I do recall.
So after, just for the listeners real quick, y'all. So after all of this, natural reactions to things, fight or flight, people assuming roles that's above and beyond the scope of their job, right? All of these things got to get investigated with a fine tooth comb by like 16 different entities. And I'm exaggerating, probably like 3 to 5 different entities have to investigate every action that was made on this ship when human nature and training took its course. And that's a hell of a weight to kind of think about as a COXO CMC. So that's just food for thought that I want y'all to kind of think about. After all this real life, this shit still got to get investigated, right? So Amaury, life. So E1, new ship, 5 months into deployment, October 12th. How's life since those moments? How has that affected you?
So the Navy has many things that we could do better, right? But one of the things that they did do for the Cole, that it was very good, because I don't think I would have never went for help myself, right? Was that they mandated for us to take evaluation tests like every quarter, right? So depending on your scores and and it just simply questions like, how do you feel today? Is it harder for you to wake up compared, are you sleeping 8 hours or whatever? And then depending on what score you had, then you either got to see someone or things like that. For me, it was one of those things that I'm Latinos, so not only I'm a man, I'm also Latino, so it's very macho. I don't, what feelings? What are you talking about? Like, we let's keep it pushing, right? So I was called like, hey, your scores, and I remember like it was yesterday at the beginning. I barely like wanted to say anything, and then I think the person asked about Guana or like the guys that I hang out with, that I used to hang out with, and I just broke down, and like it just all come out angry because that's how I dealt. Like that's what my PTSD manifested with anger. Um, so I got diagnosed. They did more exams and things like that, and I got diagnosed with PTSD. So which I went to LIMDU. So they had to get me off the ship. And I went to Nick Tam's land in Norfolk, and I was seeing counseling twice a week. That's how intense it was for a good 6-7 months. And it affected me in many ways, and even to this day, but especially in the early stages where my relationship with people, because what will happen is, everything will trigger me. I mean, like, I don't know, if you're chewing with your mouth open, which is one of my pet peeves, like I now today I just be like, hey, come on, man, like close your mouth, bro. Like, what's up? Back then I would have cursed you out. And then now you're like, that's pretty extreme. So now we fighting, right? Like it was manifesting even with my daughter who was little, where thankfully I never did anything to the sense of like losing it when I'm shaking my baby or hitting her or whatever. But I saw myself feeling that way, and I'm ashamed to say that today, but that's how angry I was, and that's how like I didn't know how to control my anger, and I'm still have anger issues, and it flares up in different situations. Um, so I'm constantly going to counseling, right? Like it hasn't stopped. It hasn't. I'm not gonna say I'm like but it's kind of like being in an AA team, AA meetings. Like it, alcoholics and drug addicts tell you like like it never ends. Like it's a constant. You might not go as often, and then like, well, once a period of time, I didn't go as often. I went like every 3 months or every 6 months. But then one of the things I had to do to face that fear was when I put on first, and because I wanted to make chief, I picked another DDG, and that was terrifying. And to go underway on the first time in DDG again, to have like we had a flooding, like no, like real, not drill, and those things come in my head, like it is challenging, and even to this day, like I don't see counseling as often as I used to, but that's how it changed me. Like, but at the same token, though, it benefited me in the sense of it has made me understand that counseling and talking to other people and reading and doing these things is good, and to talk to other people and embrace the fact that we have issues, man. Like, so then when I got divorced, for example, I went to that kind of counseling as well. So I was going to counseling for PTSD, and I was going counseling. But that's something that I probably, if I would have never gone to PTSD counseling, I would have never then gone to that kind of counseling, because I wouldn't have been able to admit that I had a lot to do with my divorce. If not, it was all completely my fault, right? And I wouldn't have been able to admit that. So, yeah, I'm a work in progress, brother. Like it just, I'm learning every day about myself and how to deal with people. Because not only is because of my PTSD, but because of how the Navy has evolved. If you think about it, when we came in, um, the leadership, you adjusted to the leadership. So like me as an E1, I had to adjust to my chiefs, her temper, whatever. Now we have to adjust to sailors.
Yeah, that's true.
And the only way, the only way you do that is understanding yourself and reading and knowing people and going to counseling. I mean, this is going to sound corny, but I'll throw it out there. And I'm not getting not even like 5 cents from the person that wrote this. But one of the books that have helped me the most, and I read it because of my divorce, is The 5 Love Languages.
Gary Chapman. Yeah.
And it just simply because I understand people better now, like, as I get to know you. So if we happen to chit chat more often and we work together or whatever, I can understand, he's more of a word of affirmation kind of guy. So I will come at you that way. My son, for example, my 8-year-old, he's more of a physical touch like me. So I hug him and kiss him all the time. Right. My daughter's not like that. She's a gifts person. She likes to give gifts. So although I always tell her, like, don't give me anything, I don't need anything, you're 20-year-old, I don't want you to spend your money, I had to stop because I had to be like, that's what she loves to do. So, let her do what she loves to do. So that's how it changed me. Like, I still deal with PTSD. I have nightmares, but I try to deal with it by doing things like this. Like, I do these things. And like when I did that article, and when I go speak in other places and do a podcast or whatever, I do it for me, in the sense of like, to help me, not because I want to. I hope I came across as, I haven't said anything. I didn't save no lives. I didn't, send the most important message on the ship. I didn't shoot anybody down. Like, I didn't do nothing heroic. So I don't have a story to tell per se, but there's the Cole story. And that's how I feel better, is by telling you about my brothers and sisters and the amazing things that they did. That helps me.
The craziest thing is, like, the value that you had, that, like, for that fallout is invaluable as well. Like, as much as, because pretty much, and by your explanation, you were a grunt. Like, pretty much, hey, you tell me to go here, I'm going to go there. And these times, we need
That's what you
grunts.
need.
Like, it's certain times that, for instance, like me personally, I'm not a grunt, right? It's certain times I'm not a grunt, but I'd be like, boy, I wish I had somebody, I wish I had somebody to go do the work right now. You know what I'm saying? Because it's certain, like, for instance, I don't like filming. I don't like it. Like, I don't like using the camera to film, but I have to. I wish I had somebody else to go film. Like, it's a job for everybody to do, and you did yours. You tell me to do something, I'm doing it. We need people like that. You know what I'm saying? I got a question for you, though. Did losing a lot of friends on your first ship make you any more guarded when it came to relationships moving forward, whether it be in the Navy or out of the Navy?
I'm glad you asked that question, because that's not something that I had thought about a lot, honestly. I will say no, but I'm the same person that enjoys being alone.
Yeah.
Like I could tell you, no, I still, I get friends. I do friendships, I meet people, I'm cool with it, and I am.
Yeah.
But I'm a loner. Like, so much so that I have had issues with relationships because, after a certain time, they want to move in and, they want to, we want to share space or whatever. And I can only stand my own kids. That's it.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I can't pinpoint it and say, yeah, like, I do this and I do that, not to, but there has to be something with the fact that I don't like to be around people.
Yeah.
I like my own space. I like to be by myself. Even at work, I used to take a lot of pride on the fact that you didn't find me in the cheese mess on the way.
I used to take pride
I was
in that
in my
too.
office.
I used to take pride.
Yeah,
I did, David. I used to take pride in that. Well, y'all never see me up ahead.
I used to be like, I even put a bet to my sailors. I know we're not supposed to be betting, but I used to be like, for every time you call me and I'm not in my office and I'm in the cheese mess, I will put $5 in this can. And by the end of the deployment, you guys could split it. They had $25 for the whole deployment.
Damn.
Because they could find me in my office, berthing when it was time to sleep, or I'll be in the gym.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, because
I said, don't count when we eat or when we have a meeting. It's a meeting time. It's in the POD, eating. I got to eat. there's a DRB going on, don't count those times.
Right.
And, you can't find me in the office.
Yeah.
But if it's any outside of that and I'm not in the office and I'm just like shooting the shit and the cheese mess, yeah, charge me. So I used to take, so my point to you though, I bring that up to say that that's how much I like to be on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I think that has come from the Cole, because I wasn't like that when I was younger.
Yeah.
Right. I like to be around my cousins and my brothers and things like that. And after the Cole, and I didn't notice at first in the first couple of years, but as I'm getting more older and get more grumpy or whatever, but I just don't like people around me.
Yeah.
I get invited to a bunch of stuff all the time. It gets to the point now that I don't get invited as much because I always know I'm not going to go anywhere.
Hey, so you got a question, Damon? Because I got another question. You got a question?
No, go ahead, bro.
All right. So my question is about the season, right? And we're gonna wrap for everybody. We're gonna wrap in a minute, but we're having such a great conversation here. So my question is about the season, right? So I'm not gonna talk too much about the season because we like to keep a lot of things about the season sacred.
Mm-hmm.
However, personally, right, I think like what I've received from the season and what I feel like I experienced with like the group I went through with and a lot of the selects I seen after, right? The short amount of groups that I seen after, right? Because I ain't been in the Navy that long, right? But I feel like you have to, I feel like I had to get over myself. Like, so, and I know it, so I'm not going to shy away from it, but I'm an alpha. Like I have an alpha personality, right? I'm like, as much as I don't want to do it, somehow I find myself in most cases ahead of the pack, right? As much as I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna just hang back. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna not try to, shine or whatever. I find myself naturally somewhere ahead of the pack. And it's usually out of like a Bruce Willis type rebellion. Like, hey, y'all are stupid as hell. Like, we need to be doing this, right? So then I usually let somebody else like lead, and then I'll be like, all right, come on, let's do this right. And we go here, right? And I normally find myself like that. So like, for instance, for me, what I had to get over about myself during the season was it was times that I could not be an alpha. It was times I had to shut the hell up and I had to listen, whether it be, through the Chiefs or the other selects that I was going through with. It was times that they had to lead. And dude, in the beginning, it was hard. It was almost like, yo, you would have had to sew my lips, and they saw it in my eyes every time. Every time somebody says something stupid, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know what I'm saying? But
yeah.
So what I want to ask you is, I don't know if you feel the same way, but was it anything about yourself that you had to go to get over, or anything about your experiences on the Cole or anytime after that you had to deal with when you went through the season?
So, same issue as you. I'm an alpha, still am, and I had to. Like, how they do after a certain amount of time, they just like, you shut up. Like, you just always saying stuff, always leading. So
yeah,
let someone else. And to know that you have the answer or that you know the right way, but the person right next to you don't. And you have to and then, I don't know if you've seen this or you went through it. Like you said, they will see it in me and then they instigate you.
Yeah.
So what you want to say, Amaury? You want to say something? He ready to say something. And I fell for it a couple of times, and I pay for it, right? So what's happened throughout the years, and the season, not only just the season, just as a whole, and the mess is, I had to understand that when you always the loud one or always the alpha, then it becomes like, think about like, I love my parents, so I'm not trying to speak bad to them, but my dad never hit me.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom did, right? Latin America, they don't care. They could you beat your kids and nobody says anything. So I bring that up to say that after a while, it didn't have any effect on me, right? Like, I'm gonna get beat up regardless. So whatever, I'll do what I want to do. But if I disappointed my dad, it was such a big deal because he never got, too high. So my point is, I had to learn as I went through the season, and then in my being in the mess, is to, you could still be forceful, you could still be that alpha, but you gotta understand where to be that alpha.
Mhm.
You can't be that alpha in every conversation there is, because then they just brush you off. Here he goes again.
Yep.
Here's get Damo talking about again. He always got something to say. So even if you have something very important and what you're saying is really on point and everybody should listen to you, but because it's like the crying wolf effect, they've just become, he wants to hear himself talk again. And I was told that, like, especially in my first mess,
Mhm.
like, hey man, you just love to always like be right. Like you have to be the one that's right.
It's like, I am right. That's why, because I'm right.
And you know what I mean? And so I would be looking like, but am I wrong? And they're like, that's not the point, bro. Like that's not what we're trying to get at. So that's something that I still work in process, and they gave me the rank of senior chief and of master chief, and they messed up because now I even, but I understand that when you go to ranking boards and when you go to things like that, like your vote and your opinion has a lot of weight. One, of your job, because I feel like if you're not putting the work and the grind and the deck plates, like don't come at me in the mess, like, and that's just how I feel. Or even anywhere else, like if you're not taking care of your folks, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, don't try to be almighty then when we're close and become close, because I'm going to expose you. I'm one of those, by the way.
Mhm.
But I had to centralize my energy into like, okay, yeah, they're talking about this. I'm not going to win anything by that. I think it's wrong how they're doing it, but
Mhm.
if they ask for my opinion, I give them. But then when it's other things that I feel like, especially if it's going to have an impact on the sailors, right? If it's a decision that's being made or something that we're recommending, and I've been blessed with the opportunity to be in the SCL, and I was the SCL in the Desert, so then I had 6 destroyers under me. And although I was a senior chief, I had to go and talk to the master chiefs of these destroyers and say, this is what the Commodore and I would like to get done, right?
Mhm.
And that was tough to talk to, a CMC. Like they're truly CMC, and here I am. I'm just a cell. I'm still in IT. I'm not even, I'm not even a command senior chief, but I'm the cell for the Desert, so they have to listen to me. So I had to learn, because a couple of them had to tell me to the side, and they were like, hey, your delivery is it needs some work.
Strong.
Yeah.
Strong.
It just needs some work.
I'm not
right?
a nine to tell you. Them nines, y'all will tell us.
Oh
Y'all
yeah,
will let us know.
they would, and they were like,
You're
you need
doing
to
a great job,
but yes.
Hey, bro,
yes.
I'm gonna just help you out real quick.
Yes. And I needed to hear that though. Like I just
Yeah.
so for me, it goes all back to like the one thing that I try to teach during the season. And then and it's about what I like to call your legacy. And what I mean by that is like the LPO that I told you about earlier, that from the Cole. I don't remember how many ribbons he had. I don't even remember if he had his pen. I know he did, but I don't remember, right? Like I can't picture it, right? But I remember so many things about him, the person. And that's your legacy, right? Like that's that what that sailor that you guys are leading today, your division tomorrow, and you talking to them, they're not gonna remember like, if you got a NAM in your last tour, or a COM, or if if you got 4 pens because you've been in every face of the military, you got your IW, your surface, you got your expeditionary, like you got all that stuff. They're not gonna remember all that, but they will remember if you pick them up, after they had to go to court, or if you were right next to them when they had to go to court, or if you gave them that day off because you saw them that they had that they were not acting themselves and they just needed to blow some steam out, like just literally not be at work. That's our legacy. Like that's how I feel like your legacy is what you leave that person. Are you trying to make them better in all facets? And I don't mean that you have to like hit every facet yourself, but when you try to make that person better, it usually it's like a tree. It goes from you trying to make them a better sailor, and then it's amazing how then it works into like the other things in their lives.
Yeah.
Because they got their career. Most of us joined the military to be something. Like we did it with pride. We wanted to do something. So even these sailors now, they're like, fuck the Navy. I'm gonna get out to 4 years. At the beginning, they joined with a purpose, right?
Yeah.
They just, along the way, they got lost.
Yeah.
And our legacy is either to not allow that, or if you're lucky enough to bring them back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually how I try to deal with it and the mess, and just deal with my own alphaness by just trying to be like, what a legacy are you trying to leave behind? Is it a grumpy guy that's always being loud and yelling or knows more than everybody in the room? Or you actually trying to teach
Yeah.
and, make each other better?
Yeah. Damn. Hey, Damon, you got anything else?
Yeah, man. And the same thing with me, man. That I'm more. My thing is more than it's more than one way to do it. And when you're coming up, and I've been doing this maintenance this way all my freaking life, and then somebody else doing it and they do a little bit different, get the job done, do everything, and I'm like, why you do it like that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, even though I was a work center soup, I did it like this. When I was this, I did it like that. So that was one of my biggest things, is like, it's more than one way to do it.
Yep.
Long as we successful, long as we doing our thing and we getting the job done and we doing it correctly and safely, hey, that's the key to
I love it.
safely.
I love it.
So yeah, that's the biggest thing, man. But hey, I also want to say, I know we finna get ready to try to wrap it up, man. I want to tell you, man, you got an incredible freaking story, and I feel like it's something that that people want to hear. So I know you already said you out there, you doing it, man. Keep doing it, because it's a story, and it's a powerful one, man, especially for anybody that's in the Navy, man. And like we all both agreed to, DC is big on ships. And when you telling this story, man, everybody can communicate with it. Everybody know what you're saying, and it means so much, man. Especially when we out here doing this stuff so much now, man. You got so many identities coming on the ship now, doing this stuff over and over and over, and it means a lot, man. So keep doing it, man.
Yeah. So it's two more things that I want to do. The first one is we do book of the week, right? So my book of the week this week is Front Burner by Kirk S. Lippold, retired commander, USN, who was the captain of the Cole the day of the attack, and for some of the aftermath. So a little bit about this book. I'm not going to talk too much about it because we pretty much talked through it for a lot of the episode. But Captain starts off with some brief notes about his career prior to becoming a commanding officer of the Cole, and then the majority of the meat of the book is about the attack, the aftermath of the attack, and about the sailors who lost life, on the ship. The response, and then the final third of the story has to do with the political aftermath of what happened on the Cole, like the politics of the Navy at the time, Clinton, Bush, not to downplay it, September 11th, Bin Laden, a lot of the aftermath, a lot of things happened on the Nicole, happening that pushed Cole. It's funny because the book is called Front Burner, right? For a reason, because that got to do with the kind of message that you send out for that kind of event. However, a lot of the book, the last third, got to do with how the Cole was pushed to the back burner, and a lot of other things kind of took the front. A lot of things kind of got pushed in front of it, and that kind of brings me all the way back to my Do Better segment when I think about myself and I think about the Navy and I think about the fact that, like, this story is a vital story that we need to tell forever. Like, we need to tell the story. It's more than just being on one knee while your knee's hurting at battle stations. Hearing the story, right? It's 17 of our friends that we lost one day, right? But read the book. What I'll say is I love the book. Like the Fair Just review is the best book I read this year, right? The last third of the book is more about the politics and high side, like how a captain got to deal with admirals and politicians and stuff like that. And like a lot of the epilogue, I want to say, is about the CO who was a commander dealing with like never putting on, like, actually being selected for captain, but like politics, like, kind of stopping that from happening. So he retired as a commander. He's still pretty known, or he was pretty known a little after. Like, you see him on like Fox News and different places talking about different things. But so that's what I wasn't that part of the book. I can't say I loved it too much, but like I said, this is the best book I read this year. So that was a great book. Before I want to ask you about final thoughts, Amaury, I want to tell you that I appreciate you sitting with us, for over, man, we do this for over 2 hours, and I don't even know if we really ran it down. Like, I try to sneak that, the people, so they don't know, but, we go over 2 hours a lot of times when we do these podcasts. So I like to thank you for sitting with us for over 2 hours and just talking to us, just talking about life. And I feel like it's so much more that we could talk about the Navy, even after Cole, right? Just about, Master Chief, 23 years. Like, it's a whole lot of insight that, and I think we start touching on it a lot at the end. But I appreciate this. I was looking forward to this. I had my game face on for this. I drank a Gatorade before this. I did a lot of research, man. But I really appreciate it, man. And I'm just happy that your story is your story and you get to tell it. Like, it wasn't I was the Captain America on a ship. It was the story that a lot of us would have, in this case.
relate to.
More of us than the group of people that might have done this or might have not. A lot of us will have the normal story. I was curious, so thank you for saying with us. I really do appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? You got any final thoughts?
First, I just want to thank the two of you for giving the opportunity. Right, it's even doing the article that pretty much put it more out there for a lot of people to know that. I mean, I even had sailors that have worked with me and for me. They were like, I didn't know you were in the Cole until they saw that article, right?
Mhm.
Or they were like, I knew you were in the Cole, but we didn't know you were dealing with PTSD since 20 years, and you go for 23 years in the Navy and things like that. So I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity. The only thing I will add is, all the things that I did, which wasn't a lot, right, during the Cole, from my perspective, compared to those that saved lives, that
Mhm.
were fighting fires, that were going to, flooded spaces. I didn't do any of that. So I didn't do nothing like that. But what I did do, and I continue to do, and I want to give to everybody as a final thought to think about this, is because this applies for Navy, for life, is seizing an opportunity, no matter how small it might be. Whether it's you check into the command and you the hot runner first class from your last command, and you're trying to go to this command because you want to make chief, and the collateral duty that they give you is, I don't know, Navy Marine Corps relief, which is very important, but it's only 2 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Grab it and be the best coordinator they ever had on that ship. If you are, IT2 or DC3, and they make you, the DCPO, or they tell you need to clean all the hoses in this P-way, then be the best one. So when you walk through there, the CEO says, "Who cleaned this up?" Because these hoses, they're just shiny. Everything is well done. My point is, grab every opportunity and seize it, and be the best that you could be, because your 100% might be way up here and mine is down here. But as long as we giving it our all, then we could be the best that we could be.
Thank you. Hey, for the listeners, before we go, I want to take 17 seconds of just silence to reflect on the 17 sailors that are 17 shipmates that we lost on October 12th on a Cole. So I want to take 17 seconds of silence right now. Thank you.